Okay. The first thing to understand with CMS is that every treasurer, like every role in CMS, is given a workspace. What I've done here is logged into my workspace, and let me get to another side up. Switch over so you can. So here's the normal balance or control. And I log in as a treasurer. And what it does for me is it displays my workspace. This is where I get my work done. And I can do a couple things with this workspace. There are three areas. There's the top navigation buttons. There's the vertical column, which is the task pane that now allows me to navigate in some places. You can see that work. And then there's this view pane, which has my messages and my options in it. So far, so good, Dennis. Is the screen picking up and refreshing?
I think so. It's a little small.
I don't see what he's talking about.
Yeah, so you've got right across the top where it says SBDP, CMS.
Okay.
That's your tabs.
Okay.
You have a task pane down the left and a view pane down the right.
Okay.
The view pane is really kind of your work area.
Okay.
And you can do things to animate the workspace. These will move, and they move slightly. And what most treasurers do is they increase the size completely of the area they're working in. They typically look at check requests, and it'll have their check request list for them. So you can move around and see those things. I'll show you a check request in an isolated item in a second. To get to your workspace, you can always press Home, and it always refreshes that. Let me show you a couple preliminary things that the treasurers will always have. The treasurer will always have their check requests option presented to them. You can see that this user has a lot of options because this user has many roles. They're a caseworker. They do express assistance. They also do check requests. So they're a treasurer in addition to being a caseworker. They have all these roles in CMS. But depending on, here's their treasurer role down here, treasurers can just have one role. You'll find that frequently that a treasurer is also an administrator. But whatever their role assignment is, they're going to be given, if they're a treasurer, you'll be looking at check requests. You'll also be given access to the check register. The check register can be accessed in two locations. At the conference page, you'll see a check request button. Okay? And if you're in your check request folder, looking at your check request that you need to process or have processed already, you can hit the check register button here. There's two places you can get at the check register. You can get it here in your check request area, and you could toggle back and forth between the check register here and the transaction list. Go backwards into the transaction list. I could get the check register from my conference page as well. And that gives me my check register. I'm going to go through the mechanics of the check register in just a minute. But I wanted to show you how the system works in the first place, how your workspace is laid out. Now, another important area for a treasurer, in addition to having access to the check requests right there, and in addition to knowing how to navigate and how to find your check register, is the messaging area. Every time there is a check request from a case, the treasurer will get an email and will also get a display of the messages alerting them to the fact they have a check to process, or they have a check request to process. So you'll see these, once you click on them, they'll last the day. Go ahead. Somebody have a question? I'm sorry. Okay.
No. I have a question.
Sure.
Sorry. You said that they would receive an email. Did you just mean that it would show up in this messages area here?
That's a good question.
An email on
both.
your email.
Right, both.
Email.
Both.
Yeah.
You'll get an email and a message.
The emails are coming from another.
Basically, a
Okay.
notice.
The system will email
It's a system-generated email.
Correct.
after you set up your email in CMS.
Can I
That's
supply
correct.
my email address, or are you going to give me a different one?
You'll
Oh,
put
no.
your email
Personal.
in when you set up your profile.
Okay.
Right. So the My Profile area, when I set up the original profile, it's going to have my email address generated for what I put, which email address I put in my profile. Exactly. So you'll get a message, and then you get an email, and you'll also have persistent. Any checks that you need to operate on will be in the unprocessed folder. They will stay there until they're processed. And then you get a 30-day running total of running items that you've previously processed. That's just for convenience. Okay? So the idea is I'm going to have messages that alert me to an immediate one, and then if I check requests, it'll always keep persistent the ones I have to still act on. So you can always go to your check request list and see the ones that are left to be processed. They'll always be sitting there for you. Okay? And we're going to look at a check request in a few minutes, but I want to get to the mechanics of the check register first. Okay? Let's go to that check register. Let me go home like I just logged in. I'll go to the conference page this time to navigate to get to the check register. All right? And here's the St. Vincent de Paul check register. It is not rocket science to run it, but it's pretty nifty, as the treasurer described to you guys. Mrs. Coy did. Here's what we have. CMS processes a periodic check register every month. So the idea is to go ahead and process your transactions as they come in, or batch process them, and then at the end of the month to compare this balance, the bank statement balance, with the electronically generated or paper document that describes what your bank statement ending balance is from the bank. So we're going to make sure that we reconcile to that number, and then any outstanding checks, we're going to make sure that didn't clear the bank, we're going to make sure that total is here, and that the check register balance is reduced by that outstanding check balance. It's very straightforward. The beginning balance is here, the amounts of deposits and credits, the amount of withdrawals or debits, and that gives us the number that we should reconcile to the ending bank statement balance. All right? Then we can look at if that's possible. Usually there's never any outstanding deposits. They're always processed. But it works both ways. You can have outstanding deposits and outstanding checks. So that's what these summary totals describe for you. I'm going to go through some other mechanics, so bear with me. If you want to print out the entire check register specifically, you just press this print button, and it will generate a PDF file of those transactions. You can do this.
Giving you a copy of that.
Yeah. And you can zoom. And it will tell you what your balance started out to be in terms of your bank statement beginning balance and what your ending balance was. And it will tell you the outstanding items as well, just as was reflected in what we just looked at. The column to your left is the transactions that have been cleared and the associated check number, date, and paid to, and whether they were debit or credit. Okay? So it gives you this kind of tabular summary. Any adjustments, those type of things. Okay. And I'll drill a little bit deeper in my next preview of the next after we get done with these small reports, I'll describe how transactions work. The outstanding report is what it's described to be. It actually is the items that have not cleared. You can see that most of these are at the end of the month, right? The 28th, 30th, 31st, etc. Including these two adjusting credits that carry forward the $20,000 that they were interested in looking at. Okay?
Okay.
So you have the basic structure of running a small check request with the totals. You have the capabilities to print a current activity. If you wanted to review the consolidated financial report, which is more of a cash flow report, that is, it describes the amount of money that went out the door when it was cleared or not. It will include these transactions. And it will use a different balance. It will use the ending check register balance from last month. So this is more of a cash flow, but let's take a look at it so I can give you an idea what it looks like. It also includes operating statistics for the conference.
And it's giving you a cash flow as well.
Yes. So this is the monthly conference report. It's laid out like the national report. It will pull in the membership, and it will pull in the total Vincentians, and then it will also, here's what you're interested in. Here's the second page is the Treasury report.
Yeah.
Okay, so all of these receipt items are carefully categorized, and they're categorized by using credit categories, and I'll show you how those work. And that gives you the receipts. And then your expenses, your operating expenses, your solidarity contribution, those are all segmented by transaction type in the check register. So you can't error. If you pick the right transaction type, put the date in the month, put the date and the amount, it will roll up into this report quite nicely. Okay, so CMS is focused the way that Vincent should do their accounting. It's focused to categorize these expenses in particular ways that fulfill the 990 tax qualification and the granular reporting that they need. Now you'll notice one thing. So we can do this granular segmentation of the expenses that flow through an individual conference. But look what you have here. Number 6, those we serve. Okay. Number 6, those we serve, summarizes all of the direct aid in a conference. And I'll go down to show you an appendix that breaks out that direct aid. Okay, see this appendix called direct aid? It's going to have 6A through 6M, and it breaks out individually these line items so that treasurers, while they're doing their work function, will be able to automatically produce this level of segmentation. Okay, national only requires that those we serve become summarized. But tactically, we see this in Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Texas, they really prefer to have this breakout of that direct. And then you'll see it break out of like hours and miles and any of the client demographics. So the report looks like this. I'll squeeze it down so you can look at it in aggregate. That's the 4th page. Let me start at there's the first page. It summarizes membership and who the conference is. Then I have the second page. It has the treasurer's report and any in-kind goods and services that are tracked from the case record. Then we'll have visits and services to people, which is segmented another way that National likes to have it laid out. And then the appendices. as I described before, give you greater detail on direct aid. They give you hours and miles that the volunteers have traveled for their particular activities. And all you do is you get this by pressing a button. While it's a temporary file, you'll also see up at the top, you'll see a suggested solidarity contribution. Let me stop there. Dennis, can you all see that in red? I just want to make sure you can see it.
I'm not seeing it on yours. You have to go up a little bit, Paul.
It should be right here.
You're showing the appendix still, and it
I
looks
think
like
it's frozen.
Okay. Oh, wait.
There's no movement.
Oh.
I'm sure he's moving.
I'm glad I asked.
There it is.
Okay. So I'm about 4 seconds ahead of you. Sorry about that. And that little reminder will go away when you close the month. Okay, and it's a suggested solidarity contribution. It's not binding or anything. You can close the month without putting anything in there if you don't want to. Okay. So I'm going to shrink this back down. Exit it. And I'm going to increase the size of this check register again because I'm a treasurer. I work all day long in this thing. So that's why I did it this way. So what we've done is we've looked at creating the check register, looking at the outstanding report, looking at the preview. The alterations report is really just a very specialized slight audit function. If you're doing things in CMS extraordinary transactions and you wanted to see those as a treasurer, you could press this. It'll give you a little report. If there's no items in there, then you don't have to worry about it. Now,
I'm sorry,
the mechanics,
what report is that?
the alterations report is just, it tracks the void that you might do or the refund. It's a separate little, tiny little report. Sometimes presidents or treasurers want to explain extraordinary adjustments, and this just tracks it. They're present, of course, in the check register.
Where are
So
you
that
seeing
Alteration.
alterations
It's there in the corner.
Yeah, it's right there. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. It's incredibly rare to use the thing, but you can. Okay, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to close out, or we're trying to look at March and activities in March. In a browser, for certain type of browsers, you can hit full screen, and CMS will take over the entire screen. This is a really great function if you're a treasurer, because you're working in one area. You'd like to get it completely inflated and zoomed, so it takes up the whole screen. Certain browsers do that. Well, not all of them do it. They have a zoom function, and you could press F11 to get it to go back to where it was, or press the escape button. Or some of them you can scroll up and they'll let you back. Let me go back to the full screen. 1 second. Okay, so these are the transactions that have come in during the month. Let me just take you through add a transaction, and I will go back to a transaction that is from a case. We'll cover that towards the latter part here. I want to draw your attention to adding a transaction. Okay. When you want to add a transaction, you pick from a debit or credit transaction, and this is the listing that you pick from. And it will automatically map this listing to that financial report. Remember, we saw food and groceries, housing and rent. These are all direct aid items. It also includes the solidarity contribution, transportation. So if we pick something like transportation, we fill in the payee, transaction date, check number, amount, and any notes we have. Okay? It's very straightforward. If we have a deposit, we pick credit, and we select for the types of deposits we have. Again, these will map straight to the financial report. Okay? So you can't miss, you'll always have transactions classified to that report. The report will be automatically generated. And it's a very straightforward couple data fields, check number, etc. If you pay for an item with either a credit card or a debit card, instead of writing a check number, you use the word debit transaction. Because CMS will allow you to put that in instead of a check number. And you can put the debit code, if you like, in the notes. That's the only subtlety. CMS will also, for the fiscal year, will also make sure you don't use redundant check numbers. It's important that you don't use the same check number for two different transactions, and CMS will cough up a warning sign if you do. It'll give you a warning message. Hey, you can't use that check number. You've already used it before. So you see these check numbers are all different. Some conferences like to pay a consolidated utility bill. At the beginning of the month, they decide to set aside a check number to handle 3 or 4 or 5 payments to the energy company. So what they do is they use check number 1000. They approve, and I'll show you this in the check approval process, the check request process. They'll approve 5 check requests, and they'll pay one consolidated payment to the utility companies, those with which they have an arrangement for. So they will pay $500 bills with one check, and they will say transaction 1000A, 1000B, 1000C, representing the 5 individual transactions in the check register. So the check register will always handle the individual transactions, and you can duplicate, so to speak, the check number by adding adding an alpha character to the end of the check number. Okay, I don't have an example here for you on this particular check register, but you see that in the manual. It allows you to do that. Okay, so when we have added transactions, like we could look at solidarity contribution, we will have filled out the check number, the transaction date, the amount. Okay, when it's time to clear that transaction against the bank, okay, we already used the add transaction button to add the transaction, as you saw. If we need to recalculate the balance while we're working on it, we want to see the balance of all the checks and outstanding checks, we can press the recalc button. It's usually not necessary because the recalculation is automatic most of the time. If you want to reconcile and get ready for closing the month, you press the reconcile button, and it will list the transactions that are not cleared yet. Okay? And you simply tick them off associated with your bank register. Okay? And then you press clear selected transaction. And what it will do is it will mark the transaction as cleared. Little X in this column. Sorry, a little check mark in this column. And you saw that in the print, the check register, and you saw it in the outstanding report because none of these transactions with check marks would have appeared in the transaction report. So if I could also sort by, press the top of the column and sort by those that have been cleared or not cleared, and I could scroll down to take a look at the ones I have. If I have a client or somebody that I want to use a shortcut, where I know information about the payee field or the client or the case number. If I type in, for instance, McCoy, it will filter out checks associated with that key field that I have entered. I could get back to these transactions fairly quickly. Okay? So these are the simple mechanics associated with the check register. Okay, I'm not going to close the month just yet, but I wanted you to see the array of buttons. I can get to the check request this way. I can press this button to get to old financial reports that have been created for the month, or I can look at annual reports that I've already created. I can return back to the check register. If I'd like to see other months where I'd previously closed the check register, I could go back, say, look at February or January, in this case December, and it will portray for me exactly the information that was in the check register before I closed, as I closed it. Give me the beginning balance, it just gives me the snapshot of what it was. Okay? And I can navigate to the financial reports, outstanding reports. I could print this check register out, etc. So it keeps a dossier of prior check registers that were closed. Okay. So the buttons are very self-explanatory. The items are self-explanatory. If I have an open item, like education or daycare, then I determine that I need to void this transaction, or I need to change the transaction type that it was from education and daycare to something else. I can press the change type button, and I select debit or credit. I select debit, and then it lets me change the type. Okay? Real simple stuff. And then I press update when I want to change it. These are for transactions that are not cleared yet. Okay? So I can operate on them by changing the date and those type of things. If I want to change the check number, that's a separate controlled process, and so is the changing the type. Changing the check number, I can click here and change it.
Why would you ever want to do that?
If you have a transcription error in that month where you forgot to put, you had two transactions come in and you decided to consolidate the billing of them, so you need to go in and change the check number to 1000A and 1000B. There's only a couple of scenarios where that would happen.
Okay.
But it's a good point that you just made. Why would you ever need to change? You really don't, because if you're paying attention to your check register and you're paying attention to your check approval process from the cases, you certainly wouldn't be able to do that. You certainly wouldn't need to do that. That's a good point. So if you want to void the check, okay, you can go through the void process, press yes, and it will change the check to a void, and it will zero that out from the outstanding checks area. If it's a carry forward check from a previous month, the void is processed in this current month as a negative number against your direct aid total line item. So if it was, say it was housing and storage from a previous month for $300, it would go against this month's cash flow, and it would still be booked as $300 for the previous month because it cannot go backwards. But in a 12-month period, it nets out between the months. Okay, just to let you know the mechanics on the void. Okay. If I have a transaction that's already closed, where I've closed it, okay, and I wanted to operate on it, okay, I wanted to say, if we paid $240 and it was only $200, and we wanted to mark up a refund where we received some cash, we could put the refund amount here and mark the date that we got it. Okay? If it occurs in the same month. If it occurs in the following month, we have to make an adjusting entry. Okay. So clearing transactions, voiding transactions, processing refunds against transactions, changing the transaction type, changing the transaction amount, adjusting the date, all of those things, click on it. Click on the transaction you want to alter. If it's closed and you want to perform some action on the check that requires it to be open, you just reopen it. Perform the transaction, alter it, and then reclose it. Okay, last thing we're going to look at an actual transaction that is posted to or it comes in from a case like these around here. Let me sort the top of this list so you can see cases. All of these transactions are associated with cases. Okay? Case number comes in. These are all approved check requests. Okay, let me reduce the size of this browser and bring up another one so we can get a live example. Okay. Okay. No treasurer would have this many transactions to process. This is a demo site, obviously. So I'm looking at Charlie Rose. We paid a rent check for him a couple of days ago. Okay. I got the notice in my message list. And it's an unprocessed. So I actually went here to check requests. There's Charlie. This is what you're going to see that comes through from the case. Okay? All right. If you need to review the case, you can press the review case button, and it will take you into the case itself. Okay? You can go back to the check register if you want. You can go back to the check request list if you want. But let's take a look at this one. Okay. The case worker has prepared a case. One of the final actions the caseworker takes after selecting the appropriate assistance type is to then perform a check request. The request is formulated after the caseworker has determined precisely what type of assistance this particular client needs and is qualified to receive. So by the time the treasurer gets a request, a ton of things have happened. The client has been vetted. There's an inquiry process to match the client record. If there's any flags on the client, if there's a requirement to provide some assistance, it's all triaged at the intake process. Then the second process is the assignment of the case to a specific caseworker. And then the third process is for the caseworker to actually go out and perform the casework. The fourth action of the caseworker is to then request dollars or direct aid payment. And they do so by the check request makes them select the vendor or fill out the vendor. It makes them do the necessary work with the client. So the treasurer gets a bird's eye view of the vendor and a bird's eye view of who the client is. The treasurer is also empowered to check and review the case. The treasurer is also empowered to see the amount of the request and to get a briefing of what this request is about. It's for housing and storage. It's for rent. Here's the case number. Here's the caseworker. If there was a utility payment and it was for a specific account number, the caseworker is required to redundantly put in the correct account number because the account number is typically embossed on the check many times. And the purposes of the particular check is validated by the caseworker by looking at their bills. Okay? So the treasurer is served up all of this information. And the treasurer typically picks the check number, does not normally, this is prescribed for them. It's usually, I left it open so you can kind of see it, but this usually gets set in housing and rent is usually prescribed for the treasurer. They can change it if they want to, but it usually comes in this way of the case. So let's say this case number, this check number is check number 1213. And I'm going to approve it, but I have to select, it makes me select whether this was mailed and delivered. Okay, it was delivered to the parish office. Okay, those are the two actions I'm required to perform. I got to put in the check number, and I got to put in the delivery method. Once I do that, I press the approve button, and this transaction automatically populates my check register. Okay? So when I go to the check register and I click on the item, it will have this item in there. I processed this on the 20th of April. I don't think I have the quite April check register open, but I'll show you where it shows up. Let me go to the check register. Yeah, I still have March open. I'll go to April. This is not the current month, but that transaction is now sitting there. It has a case number. It's not cleared yet, but that's how it populates. Goes in the month that I processed it.
Real.
This is March. These are examples of cases that have been processed. And these are identical. So when I click on them, you'll see what the treasurer saw on the check request. And he can do the same. He can void them, update them, delete them, those kind of things. Not delete them. This is extra buttons that I have for my login rights. But you'll see these transactions listed like that in the check register. Let me go back to where I was. So that was the only actions. If we review, go back to a check request. Excuse me. These are the actions we perform. So the amount, the check number, approve or deny it. And once we approve or deny, the caseworker gets an email message that tells them that they can proceed with closing of the case. The caseworker can also withdraw a check after they send a check request. So they can withdraw it, and if they don't withdraw it in time, obviously the treasurer can void it. Okay. Let me show you the last. Go ahead. Sorry, Dennis.
Let's talk about voiding a check for a moment. So, the treasurer, the caseworker notifies the treasurer, things didn't work out, but we've already done the check and void the check. If the treasurer voids the check in the system, what actions does the caseworker need to do in the file, if any?
Nothing. They need to withdraw the check for the case file. And there's a withdraw button. So they go back into the case and withdraw it. And when the treasurer processes the void status updates the case record. So
Did you check and close the case?
let me complete one quick item. If the treasurer unilaterally voids the check, okay, that notification, that need to, the two will need to communicate because the case worker needs to initiate the withdrawal. But if the treasurer goes ahead and voids it, the case will be updated with that void. Unilaterally, the treasurer has that kind of power, and the caseworker will see the void status of the case. Anyway, so what was the second question?
So then the caseworker has the final conversation with the client. I'm sorry, we're not able to issue the check, and then they close that case out.
That's correct. That's correct. And it's pretty rare, you know. Obviously, treasurers and caseworkers are pretty synchronized. Sometimes they call each other. And treasurer will say, you know what, we've got enough money to do this, $200 instead of $300. So I'm going to approve it for this amount, and I'll approve for $200, and then they do it. So there's some slight variance on it, but they usually are. The system will track the relays back and forth, but it's not uncommon for them to communicate.
Paul, this is Pat. Okay, we had a situation. A case had already been closed. Thought everything was taken care of and that the rent was paid. Finding out the check did not clear, so we had to follow up on it, and the client was not able to get the remainder of the rent. So therefore, we got the check back, got the check voided, but they had to go in and reopen the case so they could bring closure to it and make some notations.
Right.
But Paul, when we did that, I did not see the withdrawal. It was not my case, it was on the other people, but I didn't see a place where I could withdraw it. Did I miss something, or was that something I could just only put a comment in on?
Yeah. That question, I could give it to you. I want to get through the last part of the presentation before we lose our time, but I could definitely follow up on that item with you. I promised Margaret I would move through, but I could definitely square that one up with you, Dennis. No problem.
I think this
Let
is
me show you the last. Go ahead.
Good time to mention the importance that you have all your conference members put their email in there, because like you said, when the treasurer voids the check, an email can go back to the caseworker letting them know that they need to do something, withdraw the check.
Yeah.
Well, it just makes it more.
And I'll synchronize. It's a very advanced topic, but I'll synchronize it with you. Not advanced in terms of it's more rare, but okay. Let me show you what the caseworker does. Let me show you what the treasurer does at the end of the month, if that's okay with everybody. Let's take a look at what we have here. If we're going to close the month, the bank statement, let's say my bank statement does say $7,199.39, okay? Okay, so it checks out. And let's say I know what the outstanding checks are and the outstanding deposits. So everything's kosher. I've done all my journal entries. I've looked at my outstanding report. I clicked on my cleared column to see all the potential items that have cleared or not. Let me do this really quickly. And now I want to close the month. So I'm going to use this amount, knowing what it is, $7,119.39. $7,119.39. All right. You really need to make sure that number matches my bank statement. I'm going to close March. To start the process of reconciling this month, and I say yes, it's going to take me through a short wizard that prompts me to put my bank statement ending balance, which we discussed. It's 7119.39. And it's going to ask me if I want to clear any more transactions. In this case, I'm not going to. Okay? But I could clear the selected transactions that I marked off. But now it's going to walk me through a couple of steps, mostly their narrative. Shows me the bank balance. There it is again. It just displays for me exactly what's in CMS. Okay? Yes? Go ahead.
Right before the closing, or maybe even sometime a few days before that, does the treasurer go out to their online banking account?
Yeah, good question. Yeah.
Have a split screen, and look at which checks have cleared the bank, and then mark them cleared on CMS.
Yeah. Don't you get a
If your conference has a bank that gives you that online data and allows you to provide it, or they download an Excel spreadsheet, or they download an image of a PDF file, whatever you're using as a reference screen, precisely. Most of our treasurers actually print out their PDF and they kind of look at it, make sure it's square. But you're right, all three media are acceptable. It's a good point. Just be careful. And if the numbers are off, CMS won't let you close it. The balance is being the bank statement balance. If you get that and you're aware of your outstanding checks, you're in good shape. So you can see that it looks at the check register balance, it looks at the financial balance. The financial is that cash flow balance. Okay, so it's just a little wizard. This actually takes like seconds to do when it's doing note right, but it goes through this process, and then you press close, and it closes the month for you and publishes that report that I showed you before. Okay, so it's a very simple 3-step process to close the month, making sure I put the balance in and then I reconcile everything. It gives me my check register view again. Then it gives me my financial report balance view. Again, so I make sure these two it's just an internal check that CMS does. Make sure they're right, and then I press close. And it closes the month for me. And again, it produces this type of report. By the way, when you're going through this process of closing a month, it locks the check register so that if there's 2 treasurers, only one of them would be able to close it at any one time. But as I was describing, the monthly report will be you'll get this. The monthly report will be stored here. The monthly financial report will be stored here. So once you close a month, it will post and publish the financial report, and you will see when I close March, it'll roll over, and then it'll give me the April check register. And March will then be populated here. April is there because they've done some transactions this month, but they haven't closed March. So CMS allows you to do that, allows you to have some cases to come in April, the first week of April, or the whole of April. Sometimes people get a couple months behind. CMS allows those case-approved check requests to come through in the proper month, and then allows them to close the month after that. Okay. Running right up against the timeline here, what we want to do is also show you the conference reports. You're going to be able to produce the assistance reports. And these are the assistance categories. You can pick financial assistance or non-financial assistance. This is the in-kind assistance. Today we focused on financial assistance. And I can pick from the categories of financial assistance. This is all the direct aid that might happen, right? You see how there's no operational expenses in this pull down? I can pick a date range, like say I want to see the utility bills from February 1st to the end of March. I could do that by selecting utilities. I can hit a U, go down to the utilities button, pick the assistance type, like I want to see all the natural gas bills, and I could press Run Report, and it will pull a report. Let me go get one, give you a sample of one. So you can see what one looks like. This is the download of the report I got. Sorry. Okay. So this is an example of all of the assistance that occurred from the 2nd of March through the end of March. And it includes the case number, the client name, which I've grayed out at this point, the date, the check number, the amount, who it was paid to, and this is the assistance type. And these are the number who was assisted, and this is the particular treasurer that approved the check. And that, again, comes from this reporting function. Okay? And that's what I wanted to show you. I wanted to give you a full range so that you could see treasurer activity. If you go to search and you wanted to see check requests, and you wanted to see the check requests that were let out, just you wanted to survey them really quickly from March 1st to March 30th, and you wanted to select them by a certain status. Was it with withdrawal or denied, or the ones that were paid? And it will give you the checks. There's 20 of them, and then you can hit this and get the next set of 20. Okay, so those types of reporting utilities are built in to the system in case you need to reference them. You could also run a report on a specific transaction type and print those out, preview them, generate a report. So there's a transaction type and an assistance report type, and there's also a search that allows you to look at check requests or check requests in a particular case by case. So again, it's the check register itself is pretty straightforward. Clearing, voiding, refunds, make sure you get the right check number in, closing the month, automatically generating the reports. So you have that structure, and then you will take check requests in from the case and process them. And then thirdly, you have this small reporting function where you'll be able to summarize those. Okay.
But I got a question from the very beginning.
Sure.
Was not clear on. So you're telling me a caseworker is going to put in a case, and I get sent an email that I have to react to, which my internet service provider may or may not provide me to that. But, I mean, we get things that this person gets their gas and electric cut off that day. I got to process it that day. So, and I'm not, on the internet 24 hours a day.
Okay.
How do you
So
find out, right?
under that scenario, let me say that CMS accommodates that scenario.
No, we do.
I mean, they could still call you.
Yeah. Okay. I hear you, but let me respond. So, but you sound a little agitated, so I'll help you.
I know I process it.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't want a restrictive process when there's needy people who need a check today. I totally understand. And let me cover that.
Okay.
Let's go into the check register. All right. Outside of the system, I get a call, 15 minutes. It's 4:35, and I have to get a check down to the utility company with the account number on the check, delivered to the utility company today, because at 5 o'clock they're going to cut off the energy. That happens all the time. All the time. So what you do is go ahead and cut the physical check right now today. Get it down there. Get the client taken care of. Cut the physical check. Don't wait on CMS. Absolutely, you're absolutely correct. What will happen is the check request will come in later. Okay? It comes in 2-3 days later, whenever the caseworker gets around to it. Okay? That check request will come in. I'll slow down here so you can see it. And I put in the check number that I use to pay that utility bill. And I have already entered that transaction into the check register. I gave the check, I went into the check register, and I added that transaction. It doesn't have a case number associated with it, but I went ahead and added the transaction. Okay? The check request comes in, okay? And I type in the check number, and I press approve. And a tiny little dialogue comes up and says, hey, you've already used this check number for this transaction. Is that correct? And you say, yes. Click. Thereby unifying the check number that was originally sent out with the now late check request that comes in from the case that retrofitted the data on 2 or 3 days later or a week later. And you're set. You're all done. You process it properly. The case record gets updated with the right check number. The check register gets updated with the right case number. You're good. Do it as frequently as you want to.
Would that work for a debit too?
That would work for a debit too. Absolutely. Good question too. That's very insightful.
It's that fast.
Well, Deacon Bill, I want to check in with you. Are all of your questions answered? Because I know you're.
That was my basic thing. Because I don't see that working unless that's important. We get a lot of people that need it now.
They call the day after.
Well, and the other thing is he's let it slip out of the bag. Now, see, the deacon before he leaves has to put a blessing on the software before he leaves, and I'm not kidding either.
You got another deacon here, he can do that.
Yeah, my blessings are of a higher level.
Okay, very good. Very good.
Carry more weight.
You see, hey, both deacons, you saw how I wasn't going to miss an opportunity. You guys are supposed to help us sinners out. We know the deacons never sin, so,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I do really have to keep going. So thanks, Bill.
You're very welcome. We had to move it along at a steady clip today because we're tight on time.
Is there a number if we have questions to call?
There's a support. Yeah. We've got a support email for you, and then we've got some partnering and train the trainer, and we've got some follow-up. What we're going to do is if you've got questions, we'll also post a couple of interaction sessions where you can bring a set of questions to an online session. So it'd be like this, and we can go through your issue. And if there's a couple of treasurers, we can find a convenient date, time, 20 minutes online, real quick, go through all your issues and get you taken care of. The best thing to do is to try buddy with somebody and do your first month, and it should run pretty smoothly.
Yeah, you can look it up.
Okay. How are we doing on that end, Margaret? Are we in pretty good shape?
She Margaret left, but she's still here.
We're sure. Mark will be back in a second.
He would be back.
Okay.
What about the question I asked you a while ago? Paul, can you address that, or is that something we just probably need to talk offline about?
We'll probably talk offline. I want to find out the sequence of the void transaction and what we're trying to do.
Okay.
It's not a big one. I want to double check to make sure I've got my void status sequence. So I'm going to go study it a little bit, and then be ready for a thoughtful conversation about it.
So I have a question. Who has access to the check register? Only the treasurer and the president, or whoever the president sets up?
Administrator assigns.
Just the administrator and the treasurer. If anybody needs treasury access, you have to make them a treasurer. The officers can see produced reports, and they can look at it, but they can't go in and manipulate a transaction inside the register.
Okay, good.
Yeah. What do you guys think so far? I mean, this is your first view of it. Throw eggs at me or a tomato or tell me it's good. What's your take?
Sounds like
or you
we
don't
should
know
start-
yet, really?
Do you want us to go back for the whole fiscal year and do this?
No.
No.
Oh, Paul, they might want to know, like, if they start with the month of May, and to enter a beginning balance, you might need, if you have outstanding checks, you have to add those back in to get started, or else it's not going to come up right. So
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. That is an excellent question.
Beginning of May that all your checks are in.
You do. So you might have to, you make some notations somewhere that you added back in, say $500 worth of
That's
checks
right.
or whatever.
That's right. You for the notate when you get started at the beginning of the year, the notation would be, if I've got a carryover check for the previous month, I'll go ahead and CMS does it on a date start basis. So what you should use is the date, the first date of the current month. Go ahead and put the carryover transaction in as the first date of the month. Put the check number in there, and in the notes section of the check data form, go ahead and put this was a carry forward. You're going to have 3 or 4 of them. Just put them on the first day of the month, put them in there, and then put it in the notes section what they are, and then go ahead and clear them if they clear that month. And the other point that's very, very good is we need to start the month with the proper bank statement balance and the proper prior month's ending check register balance. The prior month check register balance would include the carry forward checks to reduce from that balance. So I can work with Dennis to define the 3 data fields we need to create your month and to establish the balances for them, and we'll work with Dennis and Margaret to do that. It takes me about a minute and a half per each conference, and we'll make sure that's set up right. And we can change it if there's a problem. We can go back and change it. That's an excellent question. Excellent question.
Really make sure that you double check your bank balance, your bank statement, and your check register before you close it out. I had a weird thing that I had a $100 mistake, 1 credit and 1 debit, and somehow they balanced each other out. So my balance was correct. But when I started looking at my amounts, I went, wait a minute, something's weird here. And so I found it, but just that you're, because I just made a mistake of entering something on both ends, which was, so just really, really double check that before you hit that button of, hey, I'm going to close the month.
Where do you enter in the 8 cents of interest that the bank gave you?
We don't get that, so that's a good point.
Yeah, we don't get interest either.
It's a receipt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a receipt.
Yeah, it would be a credit.
Yeah.
And you put it under other or something, I'm not sure.
It's a restricted fund, it's got nothing to do with this.
Well,
I think one of the things.
Yeah, okay, so that's a really good question. So at St. William, we have 3 or 4 restricted accounts right now. by restricted, they are people that we are working with on an ongoing basis, and grant money has been given specifically for them. So that money cannot be used for anything else. Expenses for them needs to come out of that grant money. Is there a way of handling that in this system?
The short answer is a small no. We don't run two balances. We only run one check register balance, and we don't run a grant drawdown balance at all. If you want to track that in your check register, what conferences do is they make a line item to make a deposit, a fund deposit. Like, let's take a look. Take a look at this. You might not be enthusiastic about it, but it's the way we can do it. And I'm not trying to be fast and cute. We're going to, there's only so much money you can spend on building a system like this in the beginning and license it. So what you do is a fund receipt for grants, and you type in, instead of the payee, you can type in the grant origin, and then in the notes you can say this is segmented money for da-da-da-da. So if it's in your existing, if you put it in your existing bank account, then you can't use a fund receipts part of it, or you could do a funds receipt as a credit and do an offsetting debit to mark the fact that the funds move between two categories inside the check register, and then write one debit for the check that went out. So if you write the deposit and then the adjustment against the deposit, it nets it out to zero, and then you send out the check with the third entry, which is the actual check itself. It goes out with the grant.
Okay. I'm gonna.
I think it's pretty cool what you guys are doing.
I may get back to you.
Okay. But you can see the limitations, yet the utility that if you're thoughtful enough, and I appreciate the discipline you have with that grant money and the need to organize it as a separate transaction is very wise. We respect it. Okay, I'm kind of running up against the timeline, so we'll just loop back to Margaret. If you guys have any questions, and we'll start to get to the mechanics of opening these registers. That's that okay with the collected group?
Is there any final quick questions? I missed part of the Q&A. Is everybody settled with it, everything? Okay.
I think it's really a matter of getting into it and using it.
I think
Yeah,
so.
you're absolutely right. Whoever said that from St. Williams is dead on.
Yes, I was the deacon, but it really was the manager for business who's done this far too many times.
All right, well, we'll accept that as a blessing then. Okay, cool deal. I'll feel much better about driving home tonight. Nothing will obstruct my way or nothing will hit me. All right, you guys.